Do you ever wonder why people do what they do? I mean, sometimes it's just bizarre. You look at somebody doing something and you think, why are they doing that? Now, if we could understand other people better, then it would help the way we interact with them and communicate with them. And it would help with our relationships, whether that's in the workplace, in the family, among friendship groups, or even with your nearest and dearest. So what we're going to do here is explore what might be going on, and to kick off, let's consider a very simple story. Let's say there's two friends that go to see the same movie together in the same place at the same time. And they watch through the movie, and then at the end of the time they discuss it, and one has really enjoyed what they've seen. You know, they found it engaging and interesting, they liked the settings and the music, but the other friend, no, they didn't enjoy it much. They found it a bit boring, a bit slow paced. They found some of the characters unconvincing. So two very different experiences of the same movie. Now, how can that happen? Because it looks as if, and in fact I think we could all agree here, that human experience is subjective. You put two people in the same situation and they don't have exactly the same experience. So let's look at what's going on. So when we consider subjective experience, there's four key points that we can tease out. And the first one, perhaps the most important one because everything else hangs on this, let's consider that it comes from thinking. In other words, it is the thinking that a person has going on at the particular time which shapes their awareness and their perception and their outlook. This would explain how the two friends experience the movie differently. Thinking is in a state of flux. Unless we are obsessing about a particular thought or set of thoughts, it moves on, it naturally flows. Then our experiences will change too, because if thought is creating that experience, then thought changing is going to change the experience. Moving on from that, point 3 is that we can say then, as an implication of what we've just looked at, that each person, including you and me, is living in a separate thought-created reality. This separate reality, because thought is in a flow, the separate realities will also change. From that we can see point 4, which is that in a particular moment in time, when we go to do something, with the current thinking that we have, it must make sense to us. Otherwise, why would we do it? And the same for everybody else. They do what makes sense to them at the time. Now, just as a footnote here, we can say that this is how regret can occur, because if somebody does something because it makes sense at the time, but later on, because their thinking changes, they look back at what they did and they can be embarrassed. Did I really do that? Or they could be shocked or disappointed or apologetic. They can regret what they did because it doesn't make sense at a later time. So that's the source of regret. And I guess we've all had experiences like that, where we've done something and look back at it and think, I wish I'd never done that. And that's because what made sense at the time we did it no longer makes sense when we reflect on it. Now, one thing we can say, reflecting on those 4 points, is that they are based on universal principles. In other words, they apply to everybody. So when we look at someone and think, why are they doing that? That's crazy. Why would they ever think of doing that? We can see now that in their reality, in their separate thought-created reality, it's making sense to them. And because that is a universal mechanism, it applies to you and it applies to me. So when we understand that mechanism, not only does it shed light on how other people work, what makes them tick, why they do things, but it also does exactly the same for us. And it's worth noting that we do crazy things too, because if you turn the tables from somebody else's point of view, we will sometimes do things that make absolutely no sense to them, because in their reality, it doesn't make sense. Now, please don't take my word for all this. I'm offering it to you to consider and to look for evidence of this mechanism in your own life. Notice when you see that your thinking is changing and causing a different perception on what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what it motivates you to do, what it doesn't motivate you to do, and how that changes over time. And the more you see for yourself how this mechanism is working, the quality of your relationships will automatically improve, because you will know that underneath all our myriad of differences, fundamentally we are all, as human beings, operating in the same way. Our thinking is creating the reality we are living in moment by moment, which in turn determines what makes sense to us to do moment by moment. And when you're relating to another person with that understanding, you're less quick to judge them. You give them more curiosity, you're interested more, perhaps you're more willing to listen more to understand their perception and their point of view. And you'll find that you may find more empathy with the other person or other people, even sometimes compassion. So just to wind up, to answer the question we started with, why do other people do crazy things? Well, it's really the same reason that you do crazy things, why I do crazy things. Fundamentally, it's the same mechanism.